Next up we have Neil McKay. So Neil with Oberbus Finance. Neil has over 20 years commercial finance industry experience, including as a senior executive with one of the world's largest and most respected financiers, GE Capital. His extensive network of contacts across the banking and finance industry allows him access to provide solutions to most lending inquiries. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. I wrote that, by the way. I can talk myself up. It's all good. And I get to talk about this fun, sexy stuff, finance. I know that's what you all came for tonight. So let's run through it. And so that's me. I seem to have missed a page. Anyway, that's fine. So what our business is, as Vicky said, Oberbus Finance. We're a full-service brokerage, finance brokerage business. We do residential mortgages, business loans, anything an SME business wants. We also fund commercial property as well. So we have a whole range of lenders that are from, the banks, obviously at the, finer pricing end of things, all the way down to private investors who will invest in loans. If you're in a business where, as we just mentioned before, that maybe your financials aren't up to date, or you might have, some issues in the business and you can't get funding from a mainstream lender, a bank or an alternative lender, we also have private lenders as well who will loan money. It's obviously at a bit higher interest rate, sometimes not so much higher. We just had one approved today that was a really good pricing. So there are alternatives available to people, so don't just think about banks. The types of loans that we arrange, purchase of new premises. So if you're going out there to buy a new premises for your own business, we certainly do get involved in that. As was just touched on before, that can be done either in individual names, a business name, or through an SMSF, and I'll talk about that shortly in how that gets funded. But clearly that's for the purchase of your own business. In investment, so commercial buildings as an investment, once again, we have a panel of lenders who will look at transactions on the basis of an investment. The thing is that the credit assessment is different if you're buying it for your own use or you're buying it as an investment. If it's an investment, they'll want to know, who's it going to be leased to, what sort of terms, all of those sorts of things. So as you're going through that process of buying the property, they're the things that you need to take into account. That's what your lender will want to know. And then obviously there's a refinance of commercial and business properties. There is a lot of inquiry around about refinancing current arrangements. People might be coming off interest-only type facilities or whatever, and are looking for a new lender to be better terms, I suppose. So we also do that. And the other one at the moment is, and we'll talk about SMSF. But there are a lot of SMSF loans out there at the moment that are at fairly high rates, because we went through this period of time where the banks pulled out of the SMSF funding sector, and there was just a few lenders in that space and they were charging higher interest rates. So what we're seeing at the moment is that people do have funding under SMSF, and it is quite expensive. So now's the time. There are more lenders that have come back into that market. Not so much the major banks, they're talking about it, but they're still quite hesitant around it. But there are some other very good lenders in the market at the moment that have some very good terms, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We can talk about it now, the loan terms. When I was putting this together, it's very difficult because the answer to this, what are loan terms and conditions, is it depends. And it depends on a whole lot of factors. But what I'll try and do here is just really cover off, and give you an idea of some of the funding that is available under commercial funding facilities. So the minimum loan, $250,000, most of the lenders won't go under that because it's not worth their while doing that sort of transaction. So just bear that in mind. But these days with the price of property, you don't see many inquiries that are under that amount. Loan to value ratio, or LVR as we call it, you can get up to 80% on commercial properties. Once again, that depends. It depends on the lender. Most of the banks are at 65, 70%. That's where they prefer to be. Alternative lenders are available. You can get up to 80% these days as an LVR, which is a much more improved position on where it used to be going back a few years ago. Loan terms up to 20 years. That's generally across the board with the banks or alternative lenders, and you can obviously have principal and interest or interest-only facilities. The interest-only facility, most lenders will only do 5 years. So once you get to the end of the 5 years, they want you to flip to principal and interest and obviously start amortising the debt and paying down some of that. But your first 5 years can be on an interest-only basis. Helps cash flow, obviously. Interest rates, today they start at 6.2%. So we just quoted one up yesterday, which was from ANZ Bank, and their pricing is probably about the sharpest in the market at the moment. So yeah, around 6.2% is the starting point for commercial property. And once again, it comes down to the risk profile, the type of property, all those sort of things, and obviously which lender you're going to. But some of them, they range from that to some of the second tiers are probably in the 7s and 8%. Some of the private lenders, if it's a first mortgage deal, might be at 9 to 11%, 12%, something like that. And your fees, evaluation fee. Just having a debate with a client before this about a valuation fee. Always expect there's going to be a valuation fee. Now there will be some occasions where the banks are doing. Seem to drive in and out here. The banks will do special deals and cover the valuation fee and things like that. Once again, it depends. It depends on what's on offer in the market if they really want the deal, and sometimes they will cover those things. But I would go into it factoring in that you need to pay a valuation fee and an establishment fee, and the establishment fee can go from anywhere from 0.25% of the loan amount to 0.75%. Depends on the lender once again. So, and once again, some lenders from time to time will have a special deal on and they'll waive those sorts of things. So when you're talking to your broker, me or Michael, particularly, they're the sorts of things to look out for in the market, who's doing special deals and that sort of thing at the moment, and that's the value that we can add to the relationship. On the right-hand side, examples of acceptable security. It's pretty basic, but certainly shop fronts, offices, factories, warehouses, medical, professional services type offices and things like that. They will all meet the criteria. What you need to watch out for in this space is if it's premises that something is being done where it may have an impact on the environment. Okay, so if it's something around chemical, things like that, the banks will get and the lenders will get a little nervous about it, and they'll want various reports done to make sure that there's no contamination or no chance of contamination, those sorts of things. So once again, if you're going outside of those preferred or those acceptable securities, they're the sorts of things you need to look out for. Not saying they won't get funded, but there's probably some additional things and maybe additional costs of the reports that you will need and things like that could come into play. So just be aware of that. And generally, I touched on the point before about your financial information and all that sort of thing, and it's really important that is up to date, and that right to probably the end of last month that your business information is up to date, at least from a profit and loss point of view. They're the general things that get looked at. A couple of things are acceptable debt service cover. So what we're talking about there is that your profit over your interest costs. Probably the lowest you'll see is 1.25 times. A lot of them will accept that, but there are lenders out there that will go up to 1.75 times. So your profit needs to be 1.75 times more than the interest costs on the loan. Okay, so once again, it depends on the lender, and so that comes into play. And the WALE, as people in the commercial property industry talk about, the weighted average lease expiry. So if you go back to the second point I had on the earlier page, if it is for an investment, they want to know obviously what the lease terms are, or that sort of thing. That comes into play, particularly around your term of loan. So obviously the longer the lease, more secure the lease, the better term and deal that you will get as well. So that needs to be taken into account. The daily news, let's talk about self-managed super funds, and it is a really interesting space at the moment. There's a lot of activity in this space. There's a lot of people talking about wanting to start an SMSF. People, I think, get nervous around the government's changes to superannuation all the time, so they want to be the master of their own destiny. So there is a lot of talk about this, but as touched on before, the funding is available for this, but it's not simple. So don't go into it thinking it's a really easy, simple thing to do. Like my wife did this morning, asking me, should we have an SMFS? And she got a quick answer of no. But no, absolutely. So SMFS, and as was highlighted before, bare trusts need to be set up, so the actual borrower as such, but they can be set up to invest in commercial property. So that's a great thing. There are tax concessions available to SMSF. So once again, that comes into play and you need to think about. Business owners can purchase a commercial property for their own operations, and you can do that. So if you're wanting to move your business, or buy a property to operate your business out of, it can be structured in this way, so it can be run under your SMSF. As far as interest rates and loan-to-value ratios go, they really do differ from lender to lender. But today there are interest rates that are kind of available in this space at maybe the high 6s, early 7s for SMSF, which is really good. There's a lot of loans out there at the moment that are at 9, 10, 11, 12%. So rates are quite good at the moment for that. And loan-to-value ratios have become better as well. Once again, the banks will want to, or the finer price lenders will want to sit around the 65% mark, but there are some out there that will obviously, as we said, go up to 80% in this space. The banks pulled out of this market a long time ago. They're still not really back in it. I think you'll see that in the near future because it's become such a lucrative and there's a lot of activity in this space, so I would suggest they'll come back into it, which will be a great thing from a pricing point of view and things like that. And as touched on before, accountants' advice is essential regarding the structure. Absolutely. All the work, as was just detailed before, comes up front in this. You've got to be set up, structured properly, all that sort of thing, before you come and talk to Michael and myself about, hey, how would we fund this? So you need to kind of get the ducks in a row when you're doing that. And that leads me to my next point. The thing that, I've been doing this for a little while, and the thing I see is people sometimes let themselves down by not seeking the support of professionals. They want to save costs, they want to do this, and particularly like with SMSF, but it's not just that, it's general properties. Seek the support of professionals, pay the money and get it right up front. Buyers advocates who Vicky will speak later on, or agents, they're experts in the market. So, they know more than you do about commercial property. Jump in, use their services and find the right property. Engage the accountant as well around your acquisitions and your self-managed super funds, and talk to the conveyancer who specialises in this space, because there are many pitfalls that can happen. I'm sure Martin will talk about this in a minute, in the property acquisition. So protect yourself from that by having the right conveyancer. And once again, one of the things we see is people go, I'll choose that conveyancer because they're cheap. Guess what? They're the ones that come back and there's all sorts of dramas as well. So I couldn't, and look, the lenders like to see this as well. They like to see professional people around the transaction. It just gives them a little bit more comfort that you're buying the right property and all of those sorts of things. So I highly recommend that you do that. That is us. As I said earlier, we are a full-service mortgage business, a mortgage broking business, and business finance. Michael and myself are always available. The presentation will be sent out if you use the QR code up there. That takes you to our link tree, which tells you all about us and everything that we do. So I encourage you to do that. And obviously, we'll be around for some questions later on. Thank you.